Yeah, I mean, I already hit the button. So if you can see in the little corner there, it says live.
Yeah, no going back now.
That means you were waiting for us. If you can see this and you can hear this, or you're watching the replay, one way or the other.
Welcome to your doom. No, we are. Well, you know what? We're Discuss Metal. This is Discuss Metal live. In that we're live, so like literally anything could happen.
Change the channel, and I'll break your fingers.
We do want to introduce our guest tonight. Mike, how you doing? Introduce yourself. Tell us everything that you know about everything. Go.
Well, at first I'm looking at your Discuss Metal, and I feel like I have the absolute shittiest. It's just like you got Discuss Metal, Dan and Joe. And it's like, oh, Mike's here too. So
hi, Mike.
Hi.
You'll have to be on a lot of shows before you start being called Discuss Metal Mike. There's also fine. There's also a lot of hazing involved. It's not pretty.
I could have been like X Mike 69420X2, I guess, but Mike's fine for now. So, but no, yeah. I'm Mike. I'm here to I guess provide moral support and offer up what little bit of knowledge I have, right?
And what are we talking about tonight, guys?
Well, tonight we are talking about video games. I like video games, and I know I've been pushing my video game shit on you guys because
quite a bit actually. It's okay though.
I just really enjoy gaming, but I also really enjoy metal, and most of the time I enjoy both of those things at the same time because I'm decent at multitasking. My favorite thing to do is turn on a shitty game and then just like put my entire music collection on shuffle. And I do that at work too. I listen to my music collection on shuffle, much to the chagrin of a lot of my coworkers. Because, well, I got it. Yeah, I got an email from my boss a couple of weeks ago that was like, "Hey, we really don't like it whenever you guys have 2 earbuds in because like you might not hear a forklift coming." So I really took that to heart, and I decided to just play my music out loud, pretty much for the world to hear. I mean, it's fine. Like if I play like some Metallica songs, everybody's like, yeah, this is really, really good. And then Napalm Death comes on, and they're like, oh my god, turn that shit off. And I'm like, but it's my art. Don't criticize my art.
You walked right into it. They asked for it, right? Don't put your earbuds in. So that's the natural progression of things, I suppose.
Can I offer a third solution? Put me somewhere where the forklift can't go, so you don't have to hear this anymore.
Well, the forklift can go anywhere. That's okay. We've got that place labeled to the teeth, so everybody should be able to avoid danger. But I'm not here to talk about work. Me and Mike actually work together, which is a lot of fun. No, I'm not going to tell you where it is, but we do work there, and we have a grand time discussing metal and discussing video games. So tonight's topic is, ever since I was a little kid, I always like to categorize things based on genres of music. For instance, I really used to do this like Lord of the Rings conversation when I was like, which races of Middle Earth are the various metal genres? So I would be all like, yeah, the orcs are black metal, right? Like 100%. And the elves are power metal because they've got like the long hair. Every elf has their own personal ray of sunshine behind them and just like a slight wind so that their hair is billowing constantly. Those guys just show up to windmill. The dwarves, those guys are going to be like death metal. They hang out in caves and they unleash horrors from the deep. So, but we're not here to have that discussion tonight. I've kind of noticed playing video games over the past way too many years to not be embarrassing, but I've always wondered, well, what genre of music are various video games? So tonight I want to just have an open discussion about where do certain games go? Like what genre of music are the Dark Souls games? What are the genres of music of Gears of War, Call of Duty, Castlevania? We're probably going to leave Super Mario out of it, and I'm intentionally leaving Doom out of this because it's just too easy.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. We
did that already. There's a link in the show notes.
Yep,
there's a genre in of itself.
Exactly.
Yep, 100%. And So yeah, I brought Mike on. I know, guys, Rance was supposed to be here tonight, but he's not feeling too good tonight. So we I was at work and I was like, hey Mike, you wanna come discuss metal with me tonight? Like we should do that. And then he was all like, I don't know, how much are you gonna pay me? And I was all like, I'll give you a hug and 4 pennies. And he agreed to do it. So
see, Nathan Explosion would have offered you half of nothing. I'd like to go for 1/4 of nothing.
All right. I mean, what the hell, guys, right? I mean, hey, you know what? It's kind of nice because ordinarily I'd be just boring my wife with this. So it's, I can actually talk to people who don't, hate me because of it, which is kind of a nice feeling every once in a while to not be, just the ass end of everybody's, just anger.
He's like, honey, do you ever think about cyberpunk being industrial metal? Because I'm thinking about that all the time. And she says, can't you just go hang out with your friends and talk about this shit?
Why can't you be a normal dad?
That's actually why I started a podcast. My wife jokes all the time that she's heard every single episode of the podcast prior to us recording them. And yeah, it can get a little bit exhausting. So we're going to exhaust you guys tonight. And but first, I just want to see how everybody's doing and get a person. Okay, I'm going to go round table. We're going to do personal introduction to heavy metal, any genre, and a personal introduction to video games. Let's see how that lines up.
Mike, I'm going to start with you.
Okay. That's so I have, Dan knows this too, because there's guys, he's in there listening to like Living Sacrifice and like really super heavy stuff. And I always try to get him to play like, high fantasy power metal and stuff. It's just the absolute geekiest shit you've ever seen. And he just rolls his eyes. But to be honest with you, I've played guitar for 20 years. I played in a band that we toured for 10 years. And like my introduction to all that was literally Trilogy by Yngwie Malmsteen. I'll straight up admit it, man. Just the man himself, God among mortals, just thrashing it and killing it. So I heard that album and it was life changing for me whenever I was in high school. And then by that point in time, I'd been playing video games for, I had an NES when it first came out. So like, Mario and Duck Hunt, there you go. Classic intro.
Let's bring it back.
Hell
right
yeah.
to the original, because that is the original
OG.
From most people's perspective, I think. Yeah, there's an Atari, but let's be honest. If you play games today, it's because you played Super Mario Brothers one time.
Pretty much.
Yeah, for you young guys that didn't start off on the Magnavox Odyssey.
Really, dude?
Yeah, man. What about you, Joe?
Where did I start with metal? I don't remember. I don't know what I heard first. Did I hear Black Sabbath? Did I hear Metallica? Did I hear Judas Priest? I know I started paying more attention when I started playing guitar, and Metallica's where it starts for me with that instrument I've been playing now for almost 20 years. But video games, very vivid memory of how that started. There's this thing called work. You have to go there. You have to do something and make money, and then you can feed yourself and house yourself. And I remember before I went to school, there was this thing called preschool. And because my parents were working parents, I had to go to preschool. But, they had to go to work. So who's going to take me to preschool? Well, that's going to be my babysitter. And I remember Sue, and I remember everybody in that house, and I remember her oldest son and his buddies were just playing The Adventures of Bayou Billy. And for some reason, that mixed with Super Mario Brothers, mixed with what I think was Contra, but might have been Commando, I can't remember. It all clicked in my brain, and I wanted a Nintendo. My first game that wasn't Super Mario Brothers or Duck Hunt was The Goonies 2. God help me, that game is a very frustrating game to play the first time until you figure out the strategy, which, for those that don't know, take the hammer, take the fist, hit the center of the screen, hit the ceiling, hit the floor, go to the next door. Repeat until you beat the game. It's a great game, by the way. That's where it starts for me, and I put those things together, and I kind of had a cheat sheet, because Goonies 2, the soundtrack of that game is the theme from Goonies. And that's like 80s pop rock right there.
That's fair.
Throw
80s
it all
pop
together.
rock.
It works.
You heard it here, ladies and gentlemen. Joe's introduction to metal was 80s pop rock. Got it. I would say with obviously
Goonies are good enough, man.
I'm sure that everybody's already heard me tell this story. I went into a lot of detail whenever I was on the Mosh Zone about this, but I got into metal pretty much. I started off with new metal in middle school, mostly thanks to Joe here.
You're welcome.
And another guy named Chris Burke. Shout out to Chris Burke. These guys would record me cassette tapes with new metal songs on them because my religious parents were very protective of what I was listening to. So like we would take Slayer, Seasons of the Abyss, and like record it over a tape that said Gospel Hits Volume 4 or something. And we would we would take that home and, just hope my parents never decided they wanted to listen to that particular gospel album. And but if they did, boy, were they in for a surprise.
Gospel Hits Volume 7. What's this? Let me put this in. Angel of Death.
Yeah.
Well,
most introduction to extreme metal was obviously like through Zayo. They kind of opened up the door for me as far as like checking out progressively heavier stuff and creepier music and just music that most people don't want to hear. And so I became really, really obsessed with that. And as far as video games go, I didn't have a Nintendo whenever I was really young. I had an IBM DOS computer, and
yes.
So I could run like a lot of those old Apogee games, like Commander Keen and Duke Nukem and Cosmos Cosmic Adventure and stuff like that. And then of course, as soon as I found Doom, that was like the Zayo of video games for me.
Dude, what about Zork?
Zork was cool.
Don't forget your text adventures.
Dude, what's funny about Zork is I played that game for like 15 years before I realized that it actually had a point. Like there's a display case inside the house and you have to find these like enchanted items and put them in the display case in order to win the game. Totally blew my mind. And I finally beat it years and years later. I played it on a 1080p screen, just those DOS text graphics. But yeah, so a lot of my introduction was computer gaming, and since then, I mean, I'm still mainly on the computer now, but I have been known to dabble in the world of consoles, and
more than once.
The game that I've been the most obsessed with is Dark Souls lately, and a lot of that comes down to me just being late to the party because I was raised super religious. There's like a kind of a 4-year gap in my enjoyment of things where I tend to get into things after everybody. I'm either on the bleeding edge before anybody cares about something, or I'm like 4 years behind. So like I keep going into my job and being like, hey, how's it going, fellow young gamers? Have you ever heard of this new and up and coming game called Dark Souls by an upstart company called From Software? And it was actually playing Dark Souls that I came up with this kind of with this discussion topic. And it's a little weird. It's a little kind of off kilter, but I don't think anybody else has ever really discussed it. And I just wanted to see like, what genres of music would like pair the best with genre, or, either genres of video games or specific series of video games. And since I'm the one that kind of came up with this, I'm going to like try to add my own first, which is
but before you get started there, Dan, where can people find all the podcasts we produce at discussmetal.com?
I mean, you just said it, so it's
you're welcome.
Discuss Metal www, right? Don't forget that, right? Because we're on AOL. Discussmetal.com. You can subscribe to the podcast anywhere you listen to your podcasts. You can subscribe here on YouTube. Follow at Discuss Metal Dan on YouTube. We're also on Instagram at Discuss Metal and on Twitter at Discuss Metal, and on Facebook under Discography Discussion. That one's different. Facebook didn't let me change the name to, they didn't let me change the name to anything else. So we're stuck with that. We came up with Discuss Metal after we came up with Discography Discussion, and but yeah,
it's a great name.
The damage has already been done. We just got hails from another heavy metal podcaster, so that's always good. Carrie Gordon, thanks for tuning in tonight.
Hi, Carrie.
Carrie's the man.
That's what I'm told.
Kyle's the man too. Kyle says you guys need to, just play more extreme metal at work on a giant Bluetooth speaker.
Yeah, well, Kyle's a troll, so that's what you get.
Man after my own heart.
Yep, 100%. But is there anything else we need to burn before we make people wait even longer for the discussion topic to come up?
I have to bring this up because I'm a little concerned. History has shown that this is something to be concerned about. Scrolling through the feeds, looking at the new releases, because one thing Dan and I do all the time at patreon.com/discussmetal, we do individual album reviews, $1 a month. It gets you into that exclusive album review feed. We love listening to new music and talking about it right at the very beginning of the discography, not just retroactively, filling in the blanks sometimes when you have artists that have been around for a while. Then I saw that Kirk Hammett is releasing his first solo EP.
Ooh.
And guys, I gotta say, I'm a little worried about this, because historically, anytime Metallica tries to put out individual records, it usually means there's an issue going on, or it becomes an issue later on. I mean, I don't want to bring up what happened to Jason, but because I wasn't there and I don't really know, but there's the stories we were all told. So here's Kirk finally, after all these years, saying, I got some individual guitar stuff I want to lay down. And all joking aside, I'm really excited because I think sometimes we forget how good Kirk is and how big he was back in the day. So I'm anxious to hear this. I sampled the video that's linked in this article, which, I mean, you could find this everywhere the metal news is. It sounds like a film score, but it's kind of cool because, I mean, it's Kirk. And
it's not just an extended wah
him.
pedal. It's not just an extended wah pedal solo.
No, that's what happens on the mastering day. They get the mastering engineer to make sure everything sounds good. Then he wahs the whole mix.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Kirk Hammett, I haven't really followed Kirk Hammett in a very, very long time. And so I'm not gonna talk shit on him, but yeah, I'm not too interested. I mean, I'm sure you're gonna force me to listen to it at some point for Patreon.
If I don't, Josh will.
So, make sure you guys pay that $1 to hear me just shit all over this album that I haven't heard yet, but I'm pretty sure I'm gonna shit all over it.
Hey, Joe, tell us again where we can find such high quality content on Patreon, please.
Well, that's patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Yeah, tried to get the whole Unison thing, but the internet blocked me from it. But yeah, guys, we're here. This is for me. The whole week's been leading up to this. For Mike, the whole day. For Joe, the whole month.
Just to be clear, we're putting Doom on a pedestal, right? Like we've talked about that.
Yeah, Doom is off on its own. We have our own 2-hour video of us just absolutely salivating all over Doom and Mick Gordon and the soundtrack and how great it is and
it's good.
How it makes us feel inside. So I'm gonna start off with some of the observations that I have made, and the first one, obviously, I'm gonna jump into with Dark Souls. With Dark Souls, I'm definitely getting a very strong death. I feel like a wine taster. I'm feeling notes of, I get a very strong death doom. Yes. I'm getting a very strong death doom metal vibe off of Dark Souls because the game is such a grind, and because I don't know if you've played Dark Souls, but it's not just a clever name. It is one of the darkest games I've ever played in my life, and I can't get enough of it. It's got kind of that just dank, hopeless atmosphere, and the actual gameplay is also equally dank. Not jank, but definitely dank. In that you can overcome it, but maybe you're going to feel too depressed to overcome it. And I only usually feel that way whenever I'm listening to like My Dying Bride or early Paramecium, most of Paramecium. Maybe some really, really, really old November's Doom. And I don't know, I could never shake that to the point where if the soundtrack for Dark Souls wasn't so damn good, I'd be listening to all of these Death Doom bands while I play through the game, and I feel that they would sync up surprisingly well.
It has the same vibe as like a dungeon crawl, where it just feels wet and claustrophobic, even though that game is a huge map. Underworld, underground. I haven't played that much Dark Souls, but I was underground the whole time I was playing it. And it gives you that vibe of it's not just dark and hopeless, but you don't really see the sunlight. And I can't remember, there was a name of a movie a few years ago where everyone was trying to survive underground and the sun was basically a myth. And it gives you that same kind of vibe where you're made to feel like everything has just burned and now you're trying to survive.
I'm with you guys to a point. I think that, you could definitely get that sludgy, doomy kind of Paradise Lost, just like slog at it, right? But then you meet like Solaire of Astora, right? And you praise the hell out of the sun, and then you fight Seath the Scaleless. That's like to me, that's like solid, like Luca Turilli territory. I'm waiting for him to come out of the clouds and shred. Like, we're talking Christopher Lee narrating the whole thing. There's some definite power metal moments in that.
That's fair. Whenever Dark Souls decides it wants to jump in, with massive spectacle, it can absolutely go to these ridiculously soaring heights. And I think almost to a certain degree they have to have that, because like honestly, we probably would all just be more depressed than we probably were when we started playing it. So yeah, I could see a little bit of that power metal in there as well. So are there ever going to be any Death Doom bands that incorporate power metal elements into their sound, or is that like a contradiction?
God, I hope.
I'm waiting for the email now. There's at least 400 bands that mix power metal elements with traditional Death Doom bands. So
you've never heard of Power Doom.
Yeah, definitely send us those emails, danandjoeshow@gmail.com. I get a huge kick out of reading them. And sometimes I actually find new bands, which is pretty legit. But yeah, so like with Dark Souls, the entire series, especially like Dark Souls 3 is where I can kind of feel some of the more bigger like spectacle things, spectacle thingies, where everything just kind of seems to be larger than life. And Elden Ring is kind of almost that love child, I think, between the power metal with the open world, with the open world, with as well as like, you've still got kind of that deep, dank sort of Demon Souls or Dark Souls underlying there.
Right, it's the same vibe, but it's a little bit brighter.
Just a hair. I mean, they don't call them light souls, but yeah. I could definitely feel it. It's speaking on doom metal too, another sort of From Software game is the Kingsfield games, which I played pretty extensively before I played Dark Souls. And it turns out I didn't actually have to do that. I could have just jumped in head first, but instead
you really should have just played the Dark Souls games, dude.
I spent like 200 hours playing the Kingsfield games with all my spare time. So if anybody wants to know what I was doing during my extended vacation, it was playing a lot of Kingsfield in the dark.
At least
alone.
Demon Souls, come on.
But I feel like with Kings, if Dark Souls and Demon Souls are like Death Doom, because they're like more brutal, I feel like Kingsfield is like traditional doom metal. So you've got like, your Sabbath and Candlemass and Witchfinder General, like, because those bands were all extremely hopeless sounding, but they also had, that sort of classic metal vocal. A lot of these guys were like really obsessed with Jeff Tate, from Queensryche, so they like really really wanted to sound like that. So I was listening to a Christian doom band called Veni Domine. I think they're from Sweden.
What is it called?
Veni Domine. And I'll link it to you. It's fucking radical. It's really good.
No shit.
I have that on the schedule now, right?
Yeah, the dude's like a better he's like a better version of Jeff Tate. Like, I'll just say it. Yeah, like he's
Wow.
he goes really really far in that direction. But the reason I think Kingsfield more matches traditional doom metal is because Kingsfield is also set in like classic high fantasy, whereas like Dark Souls is set like in very very dark depressing sort of fantasy. uh Kingsfield has that sort of depressive atmosphere, but because it's set in high fantasy with the high elves and well, the Seath the Dragon's actually in both games. Seath was a lot easier at the end of Kingsfield 2 than he was, or at the end of or middle of Dark Souls. So, but I guess we can get off of the Souls thing. So I know I had you guys brainstorm, so I'm kind of interested to see what you guys came up with on that front of video game series with metal genres.
Well, I wanted to dig into the racing games over time. When I think of Cruisin' USA or I think of Need for Speed, Gran Turismo, you've heard all of the racing tropes or the go fast tropes, and Initial D soundtrack says it all. Deja Vu. That's all I think of now when I'm playing those games. But I was going through them and I realized the 80s nostalgia thing for the past few years has really kind of changed my mentality of what the genre would be. Because years ago I would have said, oh dude, it's just straight California heavy metal, rock, Motley Crue, whatever. Now I'm like, that's Motorhead. Not to just
Interesting.
hit it right on the head, but there you go.
Good take.
Well, because it's we're going fast, right? So we're playing fast, and we've got an attitude because we're driving with the top down on whatever sports car this is. Because I'm not a car guy, I just play the game and I go as fast as possible. Then I started to mix in Road Rash, so then all this stuff just kind of flew together. I'm thinking, it really does change over time what genre you want to listen to when you're playing the game that just wants to go fast. But I think right now those games are just your Motley Crue, California, nostalgic heavy metal. And I'm cool with that because those are the metal bands. And if John Drake was here, he'd be screaming, Van Halen, dude, seriously. You're driving fast, you've got a groove, and you've got a serious, I'm awesome attitude. Well, that was the 80s. So that was the first one that stood out to me. But the question I have is, why does that attitude and why does that genre, that feeling, change over time? The game didn't change.
Like, why does it like the genre change? I mean, for me, and maybe it's just me being like a nostalgic loser, but hair metal, man, 80s metal, that stuff to me, it still gets me going, man. Like, I can totally see like sitting down playing like Cruise in LA or something like that, and just I got Crew or I got Brittany Fox or anybody else. I'm just like, you're in the zone, man, right? What else are you supposed to do, right?
Or like San Francisco Rush.
Yeah.
Which that had a whole industrial thing going on, but just turn the music off and listen to some fucking Crew. It'll be great.
I'd mow my yard with gusto with that shit on. Seriously, it's like you just got to get up and like walk or something, right? You get stoked about it. So yeah, of course.
Exactly. I know Dan doesn't play a lot of racing games, but that was the first thing.
I play F-Zero X for the N64, and that game is basically a metal album with a video game to go with it. It's first of all, it's like one of the only, if not the only, N64 game that runs at a solid 60 frames a second. At the cost of the graphical fidelity, it looks like you're racing like Lego hovercrafts. I like futuristic racing games. Play a lot of Pod Racer, and
it's classic.
The game that I play on modern on my PC now is it's called Redout, and it's a lot like Wipeout. For PlayStation and N64. Definitely those are definitely some of my favorite games. So I do actually find myself when I'm listening to music for the show, a lot of the times I will pop on a game like Pod Racer or F-Zero whenever I'm doing my music listening, and I can just sort of like halfway pay attention to each. But that's interesting. With the racing games and racing games with sort of the speed metal and the hair metal of the 80s. I would not have thought that, because since I only play futuristic racing games, all I can think of is like industrial metal. Like I could definitely like get down to some to some Fear Factory or something like that, whenever I'm playing a futuristic racing game.
What about the beat 'em ups?
Oh,
man, hell yeah! I thought about that earlier, so I'm glad you bring that up. I'm thinking like River City Ransom or like Double Dragon. That's like tough guy hardcore, baby. That's Throwdown before they got shitty, and like we're talking Madball. That you know what I mean? That genre is like the that picture of shirtless Alex Jones when he's beat red, like just flexing real hard. That's that whole genre, baby. Tough guy hardcore all the way. That shit is just. You know what I mean? When you listen to that and all you want to do is like just get in the pit and just start windmilling like crazy, it's River City Ransom. It's Double Dragon.
One time, put on some Final Fight, find the arcade version. I don't care how you do it, and just listen to Fit for a King Backbreaker, and you'll understand what I'm thinking. Like, no, I need timing to destroy these guys in front of me.
Yeah, playing as Hagar, actually breaking people's backs to Backbreaker.
Just so good.
Pretty good. 3 words: Streets of Rage.
Oh hell yeah!
I definitely listened to a lot of Satisfaction is the Death of Desire while playing Streets of Rage, and it did not disappoint.
It's hard to fight that nostalgia though with that soundtrack. That's good enough on its own.
Dude, it's so good. I'm not like the world's biggest Hatebreed fan, but like if you go listen to our episode that we did on Hatebreed, it's pretty clear that like I actually am a fan. I just don't like telling people that I'm a fan for some reason. But I let it all fly. And of course, it wouldn't be this show if I didn't talk about all the Christian hardcore bands that I listened to growing up, like Seventh Star, No Innocent Victim. Bands like some of the early spiritual hardcore bands like Overcome, and obviously early Zao, and that all had that sort of like Earth Crisis meets like Hatebreed sort of sound. And yeah, I definitely played a lot of side-scrolling beat 'em ups during that time period. I played a lot of Streets of Rage, Double Dragon, River City Ransom, and then even like Captain Commando, which was like a really weird one, a Capcom game, Dungeons and Dragons, Tower of Doom. Golden Axe, yes.
Hell yeah. Golden Axe is that's the shit.
Golden Axe, you have to keep the volume up, though. You can't just turn the music over, because in Golden Axe, you need to hear the enemy's death screams, as they fall to the ground dead and then they disappear. No, it's more like, well, on the Genesis, that's what it's like. I think they had more high quality samples in the arcade, but oh my God, yeah, beat 'em ups and tough guys, beat 'em ups with beat down hardcore. That's, that's where it's at. That's really good. That's a really good one. I've been racking my brain on Castlevania, because on one side of the fence I want to call it gothic metal, but it feels a little power metal too.
I don't know, man. We talked about that earlier. I get straight like the melodrama. I'm thinking like Symphony X, man. That's some Peter Steele shit right there. You know what I mean? It's that what is a man? It's that, yeah, dude. It's fucking goth rock, dude. It's that Peter Steele, shirtless and altogether too greasy, just like looking straight at you and just giving it to you. It's Castlevania, dude.
Too greasy. Wow.
Yeah, way altogether too greasy. Just Peter Steele, just right there in your face.
You don't belong in this world. What was that band we listened to on Patreon the other day? Like 3 months ago. Unto Others.
Yes.
I remember I was like, dude, it's like goth rock with Glenn Danzig on vocals. It was
it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
It wasn't actually Glenn Danzig, but it felt very, very, very close.
It was in the spirit.
Yes. And I've been trying really hard to find one for metalcore. I think that the beat 'em ups are good, right? I think the beat 'em ups are.
What about the looter shooters? I'm talking the Destiny. Yeah, think Destiny 2, like when you're fighting the impossible creatures, or even Borderlands 2, Borderlands 3. When it gets truly chaotic, that's metalcore. Because what is metalcore in the pit? It's the hardcore dancing. Everybody's going to throw down. Everybody is going to slam. And when it gets so busy that you're dodging bullets like Ikaruga, but it's first person, that's stressful, dude.
So what type of metalcore are we talking, though? Because that's, obviously metalcore is its own.
Good question.
Yeah, because like, are we talking like Dillinger Escape Plan, Earth Crisis? Because at that point, we're in shoot 'em up territory, just straight like, bullet hell shooters, just dodging in and out of the songs and not really knowing what's coming ahead of time. So like, I can hear that like spastic, like botch, coalesce, Norma Jean, that sort of craziness coming out of like the shoot 'em ups. But looter shooters, that's interesting, and that's hard to pin down.
You can get on a rhythm, and then if the music doesn't fit or it's not fast enough, it's not slow enough, you can actually hurt your playing. Because if you find that perfect tempo, you're trying to stick with it, that you just get in a rhythm, changing guns, reloading, ducking behind cover, not Gears of War cover shooting. That's a totally different thing, but it's got the same vibe. The game is trying to put pressure on you. A good battle in a looter shooter is you barely make it out alive, but you make it out with more ammo than you have ever carried in your life.
I can see metalcore for that. I mean, it depends. Like Dan, you hit the nail on the head. Like what type of metalcore, right? I mean, some of it was like, closer to like pop punk or like some sort of like crossover pop punk towards the end there. But yeah, some of the classic stuff, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I could definitely see some of the stuff that had like a little bit more meat on the bones. Before every metalcore band went into the same studio with the same producer, with the same plugins, with the same drum samples. Like so yeah, a lot of that stuff runs together. But for me, there is the one that's been eluding me the most is death metal. And this is getting dangerously close to talking about Doom, but I'm going to do my best to not go exactly in that direction. But I have to give it to the boomer shooters of the early 90s. In the sense of, you had games like Quake and Wolfenstein, and then, this other game. And then you had you had your Duke Nukem 3Ds, your Shadow Warriors, and I see those as like sort of your classic death metal bands, like your Death and Obituary, and Napalm Death was not really.
Get yourself out of this one. Dusk, a medieval.
Well,
so did a revival, yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I was going to get into I was going to get into that because like when I think of Dusk and I think of oh my god, the other one you just said it, a medieval. Yeah, actually, I streamed that entire game on my gaming channel. I don't know how I missed that one, but yeah, like those games, I think of like bands like Blood Incantation, and you guys remember that band Barn? They were the guys that had this viral video where they like were playing like death covers, really like spot on note for note, and they're all like wearing clown makeup and stuff at a birthday party, but they're playing they're fucking playing like The Philosopher, by Death, and but it turns out that these guys are like they were like 17 or something. Like they were a new band, but they wanted to play like techie, like old school death metal. And I really loved that. I'm actually going to look it up and see if I can at least pull up the visual of it, because it's absolutely atrocious. Okay, so they're not wearing clown makeup. I'm remembering that wrong. Oh no. Okay, no. Okay, so yeah, we've got Barn covering Zombie Ritual. Let me see if I can pull this up, because this is.
I'm having flashbacks now. I remember this being exceptionally good for what it was supposed to be.
It's really good, and I'm not going to share the audio because we'll put a link to this in the show notes after we're not live anymore. But this was absolutely incredible to me. Let's see if I can. Yeah. Here we go.
Yes. Got it?
Yeah, I do.
"17-year-old band.
Yeah.
We're going to dress up like a
Holy
robot."
shit.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah. And they're playing Zombie Ritual by Death. They're just outside somebody's house, just sitting on the patio. And it's like literally one of the craziest things I've ever heard. And this is honestly what the Boomer Shooter revival reminds me of. Where like they're like, okay,
We take
we're gonna go
inspiration
back.
from Death and Mushroom Head.
Yeah, like we're gonna go back to what we enjoyed doing as kids, but we're gonna try to like make it novel and interesting. And I feel like Dusk and a Medieval had definitely done that. They've really poured a lot of life back into that. And you know, this is also how you get. I mean, I know Blood Incantations have been around for a long time now, but at the time they weren't. You know, like you know, a lot of that '90s death metal. If you go back and listen to it now, and we've done this notoriously on the show, much to the anger of some commenters, where like we'll talk about a classic death metal band, like the one I can think of off the top of my head is yeah, see, I already forgot who they are. Malevolent Creation. And we were like, yeah, this old death metal stuff's like cool, but it's like banking on the fact only that it's extreme. And, you know, Obituary was kind of like that. They put out like a billion albums that were all exactly the same. And so like when I'm like, you know, 7 albums deep into the Obituary discography, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I really liked, you know, kind of the first couple of records. And it's not that these ones I'm listening to are bad, but like it's kind of like playing Doom mods, you know, for like 20 years, you know, or just all of these custom maps that people have made for all these games. You start kind of really getting burned out. And so you had games, the newer Boomer shooters always have some sort of interesting mechanic. Like with a Medieval, it was having like, you know, mana and a magic system. So it's like we're gonna give you what you like, but we're also going to mix it in with a little bit of modern flair. And that's kind of how I feel about like a lot of the modern death metal bands now. Is it seems like everybody's trying to capture that sort of progressive melodic, you know, sound, you know, and technical obviously sound of older bands like Death and Pestilence and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's my pick for death metal. Would definitely have to be the Boomer Shooters.
Now, what about survival horror? Where do you put that?
That's tough.
Because it's the opposite of everything we've been talking about. Survival horror wants to set you up to be scared.
I mean, I'm thinking back to like, you know, OG Resident Evil, right? There's moments in that where it's like, could it be Doom? Yeah, absolutely it could be. It's like a terrifying moment. And then like halfway through, you're waiting to hear like the Inspector Gadget theme. It gets just bonkers and zany, right? They throw a curveball at you. So that's tough, man. That's like RE1, yeah, like Doom. In certain parts of like RE2 and 3 when they kind of got more set pieces, maybe like, I don't know, hardcore, maybe some sort of like a more upbeat thing like that. But that's a tough one.
See, I'm going to go a different way. 80s scary thrash. Think King Diamond and Merciful Fate.
Oh, okay.
Like
all right.
A little bit of absurdity, but it's the subject matter. It's the evil feeling. Then you have these giant room sounds with drums that are gigantic. So much plate reverb, it's not even funny. Now, apply that to it's dark. You're alone. There are zombies. You could shoot them, or you could try to get by them and save some ammo because who knows what's coming around the corner. Then you get through the game then you get through the game the first time, and you don't know how you made it out. That's like listening to Midnight. I did that today. I was on a King Diamond fit. Like, I want to listen to a King Diamond album. And yeah, as it builds and builds, he makes you feel a little hopeless. Then you get through it, and how did he survive? How did the character survive the story? Did they survive the story? It gives you that same vibe. It just puts you in a very scary place. But it's not... I'm sorry, Dan. Ghost kind of gives the same feeling, right? When you're seeing Ghost live, it's putting you in a scary place. But then it lets you go, just to remind you of the horrors that you just got through.
I mean, I did get through a set of horrors, but I don't think it's the kind that were intended. But it's fine. I mean, yeah, I honestly could see a little bit of a classic metal parallel there, though. But yeah, definitely more like King Diamond, where the whole point is to be evil, quote unquote. And like even Opeth kind of falls into that like a little bit jokingly, as they always talk about, that sort of stuff. But I would give... I was going to give the progressive death metal title to survival horror games, because they have sort of the horror, the gore, and the scary, the scare tactics and stuff. But the cool thing about progressive death metal is that, like, if you're not into death metal, you could probably listen to progressive death metal. So, like, if you're not into like boomer shooters because they're too fast paced and too action packed, survival horror games have that fast paced, action packed atmosphere too. But it's broken up into chunks where you have all of these periods of like exploration and puzzle solving. So to me, that sounds like a November's Doom. That sounds like an Opeth, or older Opeth sort of experience where, like, yeah, there's a little bit of that scary shit in there, but this is basically a puzzle game, or it's basically an adventure game,
Exactly.
That's eye-opening, guys. Now I'm gonna have to like go back to RE1, put it on mute, and put like them on, right? Some King Diamond, and just like just see what develops. It's like your Dark Side of the Moon with Wizard of Oz. Just put some King Diamond on and just... I hadn't even thought about it. That's a good point you bring up, Joe. I'm gonna have to get in there and just
I put a lot of time into this one.
There you go. All right.
You
Hell
did.
Yeah.
What about Call of Duty? What's Call of Duty?
Oh, Papa Roach.
Interesting you should say that.
Papa Roach.
There's a certain month where we only talk about new metal coming up that I may have to listen to some Papa Roach. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So yeah, if I come into work like acting real angsty, you'll know why.
Because you cut your life into pieces, dude. You were listening to Papa Roach.
Bring back the giant pants, dude. Do it.
Losing my mind.
Baby.
Went to the general to save me some time. Yeah, I absolutely think that. I think that Call of Duty and Halo and a lot of the competitive multiplayer shooters that dominated most of the 2000s and still continue to dominate to this day, that's got to be new metal, right? That's your radio friendly metal. You could even 100%. Throw in some of the quote unquote new metalcore bands that are out there into that category, because like this is for a lot of kids out there, and this is not a slam. This is just a statement of based on observation that I've made being an ex-game store employee. A lot of kids' first introduction to video games was Call of Duty, or at least to serious games. A lot of these kids, they just went off and maybe they had their brother's PS2 or N64 and they played some games, but once they got their console and their game, it's all about Call of Duty, and it's all about Halo, and it's all about playing online. It's all about talking shit to people that are older than you, and you just dominating them because you have all day to play the game, whereas the adults have to work all day and they only get to play for maybe a couple hours each night. But yeah,
dude, you got to start every round by throwing a grenade directly up in the air and then running the other way.
Yeah, or knife, or tomahawk, just depends on the game.
It's the only way to start the round
every time. And I think that embodies new metal and even some latter day metalcore, in the sense of, when I say metalcore, I'm talking like bands like, maybe Trivium, or Bullet for My Valentine. A lot of those bands, for younger kids, were probably their first introduction to metal. And new metal for guys like us was a lot of our introduction to heavier music in general. I know we've kind of got our own story, but like I came up on new metal. I'm not afraid to admit that. And, new metal's cool again now in 2022. So it's all good.
Really?
Oh yeah, dude. Everybody's all about the new metal. You should go listen to our friends in the Roach Coach podcast. They are putting together what is called a new metal canon, which is they're listening to all of the influential nu metal bands that came out in the late 90s and early 2000s, as well as some newer bands they cover. And at the end of each episode, they determine whether or not this fits in the nu metal canon. Like, is it important enough to be part of the official narrative on nu metal? And those guys are doing God's work over there for sure. But I don't know. I see it like being sort of an introductory style, being very similar to what you would get out of a Call of Duty or a Halo. And that's not even to say that style of music is shallow, nor is it saying that the games themselves are shallow, because obviously Call of Duty is a game that everyone can play, but not everybody can master. I've seen people pour 1,000 hours into that game and never get any better. And with nu metal, I see people spend thousands of hours listening to nu metal bands and never getting better taste in music. So like, it just absolutely is where the parallel lies for me.
That's topical, right? Because there's thousands and thousands of nu metal bands, and they never got any better either.
Yeah, we had one local to us here in St. Louis that, they ended badly. I won't get into all that, but yeah, I remember us playing in our melodic hardcore band in 2006 up on the Delmar Loop, and we were opening for this nu metal band that had been around for like 15 years or something like that. Dude, we show up. There's like dudes with highlighted hair, but they're as old as I am now in 2006, right? like they've got the spiky hair and giant Hot Topic pants with like plastic chains hanging off the back of them. They probably bought those at a Hot Topic for like $78 back then. And it's like there's all these girls like holding their babies and stuff. Like it's one of those but this is their night to like show up and just fucking go off because their local nu metal band is rocking it out. Man, I'll say they loved that band as much as they hated us. Like, I mean, it was fantastic.
It just, that whole concert just smelled like the inside of a lit cigarette, right? There's no way it didn't. Body odor and Marlboro Red, baby. Just here it comes, right? You got the kid with you, maybe, but it better. Just man, just fucking let it go. Cut loose.
I smell more cannabis than in high school bathrooms.
Oh, hell yeah, dude. You're 35, you're almost irrelevant, but you're going to show those kids, like, I can throw down, right, man? I'm going to put trip pants on, my fucking fluorescent fishnets and shit. Just go hard.
They were like, who is this fucker in a Hopes Fall shirt with curly hair, flinging himself all over the stage? He doesn't even rap.
What the fuck is Hopes Fall, right?
Right. I mean, just like, man, where are the turntables? You guys need me to mix your turntables for you? Nah, sorry, man. We have a keyboardist because we're a melodic hardcore band and Under Oath thing. So we have a keyboardist, but yeah. Yeah, it was like, I did feel like, I remember just commenting as we were walking in and setting up. I was like, man, I feel like we just literally walked into Lollapalooza in like 1998 or something. Like, it's very, very, very strange. And like, we're up there in our tight pants and, huge belt buckles, because that was like really in that year. And it was just, it was hilarious. But I also feel that way. But I also feel that way, like with the Call of Duty series too, and the Halo series, is like the diehards. They're still have, because you have a constant influx of people that are just getting into it, right? Mixed with people that have been doing it for over a decade and a half, at that point. And just watching those two audiences clash is very similar to me. Because I kind of like, when I reached a certain point in my music listening and even in podcasting and stuff, I get kind of forgotten that like people still just listen to whatever came on like X radio station. Or like I caught a dude at work listening to Pandora the other day. I was like, Pandora? Is it like 2003? And I'm like trying to throttle. I feel like my DSL connection's being throttled. But it's like, no, man, it's all part of the music genome process. And it's like, no, dude, it's just playing the same radio shit to you over and over and over based on one song that you decided that you wanted to start with.
Yeah, but it's random and I don't have to pay for it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. We had I remember my boss at the time of the game store, we had 5 Pandora accounts because you could only listen to so many. You can only listen to so many hours ad free or something. And so whenever we run out of our hours, we just switched to the next account. So we had 5 different Gmail addresses signed up. We just log out and log in. We had like a notepad on the desktop that would like tell us what all the passwords were and stuff. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, that's just the parallel that I saw. I took way too long to explain that one, but that's just the way that I've always seen it. Is like that's like your baby's first metal band. Is you start off listening to something like Linkin Park or Demon Hunter or something like that. And it's the same with Call of Duty and Halo. It's like, yeah, this is the first game that I ever got serious about.
Now, where do you put grindcore in this analogy?
Ooh.
Something that is absurd, is fast, over the top, sometimes can't be understood. Sometimes it's enjoyed for no reason other than it's fun. Whatever combination of stimuli this person put together and called it grindcore, I like this. What games do you point at and say, that's grindcore to me?
I feel compelled to answer this, even though I don't have a good answer. So I'm thinking like, okay, you hear me out. Indie shoot 'em ups. Like
Side scroll?
No, like Geometry Wars.
Like bullet hell stuff?
Yeah, like single screen waves of enemies. I mean, even like Galaga, I think would fit sort of in the same sort of thing where like and grindcore is very much like this, as it just sort of increases in intensity over and over and over again. And at a certain point, you're concentrating so hard and going at such a level that it's like almost incomprehensible. There's two guys at our work right now. Mike brought us in an arcade machine to play games on our breaks. And there's two guys at our work that are like competing for high scores. And watching them play as they get like really, 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 really high up there, it's like if it's not grindcore and it's not completely random, it's like technical death grind or something. Like all of the stuff that's going, all the weird like unconscious programming that's going on in their brains, causing them to move exactly the right way at this exact second, like that split second decision making. So I can feel the speed, but I can't find a good comparison to the grind of grindcore.
So you're thinking the older Between the Buried and Me, where, yeah, it's grind, but then they go straight Opeth for 5 minutes straight. So it starts off as a twitch reflex, but then it becomes an extremely well-programmed twitch reflex.
See, I'm thinking more like Suffocation or Cryptopsy or something like that, like stuff that's like so fast and impossible to play. Because like that's always my biggest question when I'm listening to those two bands in particular. I'm like, how do these guys remember their songs? Like they just get to a point where like I'm like, how did you like unless you like wrote this down and you're like watching a teleprompter that's going like a million miles a minute? How do you remember like where your transitions are and your riff changes and all of that stuff? Like how do you guys even remember to do that? And like I definitely feel that way when I'm like in upper echelons of something like Pac-Man or Galaga or hell, even Space Invaders. I don't know how far you guys have ever gotten in Space Invaders, but like there comes a point where it seems like they just beeline right for the bottom of the screen.
Or Tetris.
Yeah.
It's a different version of Space Invaders if you really think about it. You just don't have a gun.
You took that I wasn't expecting like classic like arcade like bullet hell stuff for that grindcore. My mind, and this is just, if you ever played it before, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you guys have ever played Katamari Damacy,
the tape ball, yeah,
there's grindcore. What the fuck is actually going on? Like that game is just, you know what I mean? If you played grindcore or Melt Banana in the background of that game, okay, great, it fits in. What is the whole thing going? I had the first time I saw it, I thought I was having a stroke for real. I was like, what is this game? And it just kept getting more bizarre. So yeah, you want a grindcore game, go roll up people in cars and shit and make stars out of them for some giant king guy in space.
That's almost perfect.
Oh,
actually.
Yeah, it's bonkers, man.
Yeah, it absolutely blows my mind, like when I think about it, because and it's funny with the single. I think that it's a better explanation than the single arcade games, because like the single screen arcade games are like you have to get so good on a mechanical and technical level, and the mechanical level makes me think more something like oh my god, Street Sweeper by we talked about this band like last year, and I fucking loved them, and I can't remember their name because I'm live, and that's how this usually works.
It's okay, dude. We've done 268 episodes at this point.
Oh my god, yeah. Joe's been on all of them. I've actually missed some. But God, what was that band called? Godflesh, fucking God's Flesh. Street Sweeper. That is absolute mechanical depression. In 55 minutes. Like, it is absolutely the most hopeless thing I've ever heard. And I compare that very much to like Pac-Man. There's this amazing like 3-hour review of Pac-Man on YouTube by a guy named Tim Rogers. And he like Tim Rogers, he will go for 3 hours about Pac-Man, and he talks about like how much like how disembodied you have to be to play a quote unquote perfect game of Pac-Man. Oh, yeah. Where the game, like, starting off slowly increases in difficulty, and you get to a point where like whenever you eat the power pellets, like the ghosts don't even turn, they don't even turn the other color so that you can eat them. Like, they just have no effect at all. Like, in the game's like, you have to go mechanically perfect for, I think it's like 255 levels.
Oh shit.
And so like I definitely, it's so like the way you have to just purge yourself of any humanity and just become a machine.
Oh yeah.
In order to crank out a perfect game of Pac-Man or a perfect game of Donkey Kong. Those games that weren't ever actually designed to end, but the only reason they do end is because the machine literally runs out of RAM and it just crashes. Right there on the screen. Hey guys, there's a Donkey Kong kill screen coming up.
How's this for programming?
Yeah, so like I definitely get some like Godflesh or like Author and Punisher. That's sort of like very, very like cold mechanical precision.
I can track with that. I mean, if you guys ever watched that documentary, The King of Kong, like those guys are so weird and so mechanical themselves. Like, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with that. They're at that point, you could blindfold them and they beat the game. It's complete muscle memory and complete mechanics, top to bottom. You're a machine.
Or what was it was the same year. What was that? There was another one too. Man versus Snake.
Yeah, I remember that one.
And that's getting to a whole nother level of twitch reflex. Like, you're not just repeating it, but you're repeating it in a way where no matter how difficult it gets, you don't hit the kill screen. You don't hit the impossible point. It becomes an endurance round.
Yeah.
God, that's like the Tony Danza tap dance extravaganza.
Oh, yeah.
It stops being about how fun it is and turns into, you've got 30 more minutes of this.
How much can you take?
Jeez. Well,
wow.
Speaking of how much can we take, that leads me to the big kahuna, the one that I've had the most trouble pinning down. And that, of course, my friends, is the wonderful wide world of black metal. What is a black metal equivalent of video games? I have some ideas, but I'm interested in hearing your guys' ideas.
What is black metal? It's cold. It's
I
Arctic.
thought you were asking me. I was like, we've been over this.
It's very Nordic.
It's extremely Nordic.
It's Nordic Kiss, right? That's pretty much what these guys are.
It's hopelessness, right?
Yeah. Ghouls and ghosts, baby, all the way. Or ghosts and goblins.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah, please do. I remember playing Super Ghouls and Ghosts when I was a kid. I rented it from a local video game store because it looked badass from the box art, right? So I take that thing home, and to this day, I'm a 35-year-old man. I cannot beat the first level in that son of a bitch. I've never have been able to. It is impossible. So the enduring hopelessness of like 4 guys screaming in an Oslo basement record store with a Fisher Price toy mic at the top of their lungs. Yeah, it's Ghosts and Goblins. Like, there you go.
Dude, throw Metal Slug on that pile.
Oh yeah.
If it was the actual arcade, there's no way.
No.
You're done.
Nope. Like joystick and like 6-button arcade machine. Yeah. If you can do that, I'll give you $10. Like that's, yeah.
You can do that for less than $10. I'll give you $20.
Shit, that's, yeah. That talk about the hopelessness of existence, man. That trying to just Ghosts and God. And if you guys remember, like back in the day, Ghosts and Goblins on NES, like when you finally beat that game, like you got a screen that said like, hey, you know, great job, but you have to basically beat this entire game again because you didn't get the actual right ending. So you have to play through the whole thing again. Like it's an absolute slap in the face to like the player, and it's like you question your existence. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I putting myself through this hell?
That does sound very black metal. Yeah, a blaze in the northern sky. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was actually thinking too a little bit of like sort of the more modern action RPGs where there's literally just like hordes and hordes of enemies filling up the screen to where your GPU starts chugging because it's trying to generate so many characters on screen all at once. I kind of get that vibe like whenever I'm playing something like Diablo 2, that sort of very hopeless atmosphere, and that like the only actual benefit of playing a game like that is that it's going to get harder and harder and harder and harder, and it's very it's ultimately hopeless and empty feeling, because like you're going to grind for gear, and then one morning you're going to wake up and be like, the sight of this game makes me want to vomit.
So this is the opposite of Dynasty Warriors then? Because Dynasty Warriors, you feel like you're going to succeed. You don't ever get overwhelmed, even though that game is overwhelming by design.
It's pretty goofy too, though. I mean, it's got some serious like quotable one-liners in there, and it gets pretty rowdy. So that's maybe opposite of that. I think a lot of old school CRPGs, you know, like Wasteland and stuff like that, that's black metal, right? Those things are just like, again, like hopeless odds. You're just stacked against it. It's one of those games where you can just you can see 3 moves away. Oh yeah, I fucked up. I'm gonna die. Right? You can see the meaninglessness of what you're doing coming from a mile away. So yeah, old school CRPGs are brutal like that.
Yeah, they really can be. Definitely played some fucking Wizardry back in the day, and it was terrifying. Although it's funny that you bring up the CRPG dungeon crawlers, because I was thinking about that earlier, that like those ranged so much in different themes, you know, because like you'd have stuff like Wizardry, which is going to be like almost more of what I was describing with Dark Souls, you know, being like that sort of death doom sort of vibe. But then you had games like I used to play this game called Moraf's Dungeon for DOS.
Oh,
and
dude.
It was completely like incomprehensible. Like it was a first person dungeon crawl, but it's almost like what Keckle is to black metal. Like, yeah, it fits into this like sort of genre, but it's so like balls out insane and has so many like, I mean, Moraf's Dungeon. Oh my god, I wonder if I could find that, because I gotta have it on a hard drive somewhere. But man, Moraf's Dungeon was it was Moraf's Dungeons of the Unforgiven. And so I want you guys to just no relation to Metallica.
That sounds like a Nile album, dude. Like that. If you told me that was the Nile album and not a video game, I'd be like, okay, yeah, of course it is. Like, right. All right.
Yeah, no, I'll show you a little preview of Moraf's Dungeon here. This is absolutely one of the weirdest things I've ever played. And so, like, if I had to call something grindcore, this is probably what I would go for.
I'm getting flashbacks thinking about it.
Yeah, so this is Moraf's Dungeon.
Oh man,
Moraf's Dungeon of the Unforgiven. Like, I mean, it doesn't get much danker than this, boys.
What a lovely color palette they chose for
dude,
it. Dude,
are you sure the palette's right? No, that's the game.
It used,
all 256 colors at once, baby. We got 256 to use. Here they all are.
256 if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is Moraf's Dungeons of the Unforgiven. Like, holy shit. I'm gonna be playing that tonight. Dude, I just bought a brand new 4K TV. I'm gonna throw this bitch right up on that and play it. I'll have a wireless keyboard sitting on my couch. Like I don't give a fuck. This is all keyboard driven. But yeah, so like this is the kind of thing I think of too whenever you think of those like really like sort of avant-garde black metal bands, like like Keckle,
What
or
the
even
fuck
or
is
even
that?
even like Peccatum, like it's like, yeah, you're listening to it and yeah, it's basically black metal, but like it's the weirdest thing I've ever experienced. And like I feel like that's what like Moraf's Dungeon of the Unforgiven is to dungeon crawlers. Like it's completely just out there. Points for originality, but yeah, holy shit. The other one that I'm trying to sort of get is RPGs, because I feel like we're gonna have to split genres on RPGs.
Oh my god. That's
Because
like
again,
metal
they go in a million
subgenre.
different directions. Yeah.
Yeah, take your pick. Like that's, I mean, what do you want? Turn-based, real-time, JRPG? Do you want to have action RPG? That's wild. I mean, I played some that could be, it's like the progressive metal of fucking genres, and it's just like, what do you want? You want smooth jazz and death metal? Okay, here you go. Like,
You're close. It's symphonic metal by design.
okay.
Because it's epic, but it's heavy. It's intense, but then it's atmospheric and it's hopeful. And you're on a journey to succeed. Then you get to the part of the game where Chrono dies. And not everybody knows you can bring him back.
It's the Symphony X of genres, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, Mike, did you listen to the Symphony X episode? I wasn't on it.
I'm gonna have to do that because I've been going hard on that, and I discovered this band from Italy called DGM, and like I don't know how Symphony X hasn't sued them for like infringement, because those guys they want to be Symphony X. They go hard, man. I mean, if you have a bone in your body that loves like anything like just nerdy and weird, holy shit, get on some DGM, baby. That is, you want to get like just pumped up on your commute to work where you're like, yeah, I can just kick some ass today. DGM, Symphony X, take your pick.
Yeah,
See, Dan, you missed out.
Well, I was thinking like Dragon Quest, like some of these like dude, I play boring games. I'm sorry. But I do. I love playing boring games. But like, yeah, I like sort of like, for Dragon Quest and Japanese RPGs and stuff, I feel like those are just sort of like instrumental metal. Like they're a blank canvas that you can just put anything you want onto it. But when you start getting into stuff like Skyrim and Oblivion and like Elder Scrolls games and stuff, there's a level of cheese in that high fantasy that I absolutely, and I know I've already used this genre once, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's my channel. And that's going to be your traditional doom metal. This is what I think of whenever I'm thinking about Skyrim and Oblivion and stuff.
Really? Like Doom stuff? I'm thinking like if I put what the fuck?
Can you get down with some Candlemass?
I mean, okay, that I'll tell you what, I'll get down with that perm. That's some serious perm going on there. Holy shit.
I name all of my Diablo characters after him. He goes by his stage name is Messiah. Is like literally his name, and he's the Messiah of someone. Yeah, but like this is what I think of anytime I think of like the generic like high fantasy RPG. This is the first thing that comes to mind is this dude's dancing on the stage in robes with a huge crucifix around his neck. Like,
God, I'm squarely Skyrim, especially, man. I am squarely like, I pop that in and like I'm at Symphony of Enchanted Lands 2. Right there you go by Rhapsody. That Christopher Lee coming in with that, it was a dark time for all the creatures of the earth. It's just like, and then it's bonkers, right? It just fits everything. It goes to all these crescendos and these giant places. It has these dark moments. To me, that's just high fantasy Rhapsody of Fire, I guess they're called now, but Rhapsody, oh yeah, hell yeah, all the way. That is your high fantasy. Put on your armor and get after it.
Yeah, and obviously, power metal almost kind of goes without saying with a lot of those games, especially with JRPGs, because like the power metal aspect are like these giant, these giant spells where like your female character will jump up into the air and then sprout wings and just start throwing fireballs from the sky. A lot of that happens in Grandia and Grandia 2. If anybody is, if that's their out there somewhere, that's someone's very specific kink. So, fireballs and sprouting wings. But yeah, that's all the genres I can think of off the top of my head. I'm sure people will let us know which ones that we missed. Let's see, did we? Yeah, because we didn't say anything about thrash. But like with a lot of those speed genres, it's hard not to just throw those in with like racing games, right? Like
Right. It just depends on what the atmosphere of your racing game is. And we kind of talked about it in the beginning. Like Need for Speed and those games. Like they just set you up for that 80s thrash feeling.
1000%. But yeah, I think that that more or less puts a pin in it. If anybody liked this discussion and wants us to do something similar to it, maybe with Lord of the Rings and metal genre, or other things, Star Wars and metal genres, we can come up with like a million different things. Like maybe we'll become these are the guys that weren't satisfied enough with metal being categorized as it is and have decided to further categorize it by adding in all these other elements. So
we got to talk about metal. It's our fucking brand.
It's literally one of my jobs.
It's what we do.
Yeah, that's why when Mike wants to talk to me about metal at work, I'm like, hey man, I like to keep other work at other work. Oh man. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of those sort of things that I'm glad that I was able to talk about, because it's something that I don't just do it with music either. It's like a lot of the time I'll be watching a TV show and I'll try to decide which of the characters in the TV show are the most like my friends, and just like put them all sort of in those roles and in their relationship. And for some reason, Joe always ends up being the villain. Every time I'm watching a movie or something like that, I'm like, yeah, that's Jafar, dude. He's definitely Joe, like 100%.
Except for I would have succeeded.
You're the heel, Joe.
Does that make Jeff? Does that make Jeff Abu? Yeah, there you go. 100%. Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for tuning in. If you guys liked having Mike on the show, send us a message and tell us, either you love him or you hate him or he sucks or he's great. It's not going to affect my decision on whether or not I'm bringing him back, but, still feel free to do that. So, 100%. Mike, thanks so much for coming and hanging with us for this Discuss Metal Live. We do this once a month, so it is a show-up basis. So I will keep you on the inside track on what we're going to be talking about ahead of time, so that I give you more than just like 8 hours to throw together this ridiculous concept I want you to talk to us about. So yeah, thanks again, and we will see you guys right here, same bat time, same bat channel next month. And make sure you guys are checking out Discography Discussion, the podcast. We have weekly episodes where we discuss the entire discography of a metal band, except for their demos and EPs. And, we talk about it. We have fun. On the Discuss Metal podcast, we interview people and get their perspectives on how they started with music and things like that. So if you're into this type of content, definitely stay tuned in to discussmetal.com. You can listen to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. And, yeah, so definitely make sure you're checking it out. And if you want to support the show financially, you can absolutely go to patreon.com/discussmetal. We have a lot of really, really cool things that we're about to unveil on that. But one of my favorite things that we do, and we will do, actually, I think Joe and I are doing it tomorrow, is our monthly Patreon hangout. So if you want to sit down with us and have a discussion very similar to this one, make sure you are signing up for that. $5 a month gets you into the monthly Patreon hangout, and you can ask us anything you want. We play a lot of games. We have a really good time. So thanks, guys, again. We will see you next time.
Presented by discussmetal.com.